Welcome. It is no accident that you have found your way to the Release the Genie podcast. What would you do with 3 wishes? And what if you discovered that you are in fact that very genie that could grant them? Well, join us now as we discover who our next genie is as we listen in and learn the stories of triumph, inspiration, and passion with some very special guests. And now, without further delay, your host of the Release the Genie podcast, Mr. Paul Rogers.
That's so much better. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're tuning in from. I am your host, Paul Rogers, and welcome to another episode of Release the Genie. We have a fabulous genie today. She really is and lives the whole ethos of badassery. And she has a fantastic media company and podcast, which is unsugar-coated. And she keeps it real. She deals with helping other people through their trauma. She uses her experiences to really be able to get in and help. She's also recently started a clubhouse room, which is all about trauma. So, and I also forgot, she's a multi-award-winning novelist and an award-winning podcast host. And after breakfast, Aalia Lanius actually gets on with the rest of her day. So welcome to the show.
So nice to be here. Of course, I'm down in LA. I think you're up in Canada, so you're probably a little bit colder than me.
Yeah, we've got too much snow here, and I'm trying to borrow your weather at the moment.
Our sun, yes, yeah. I know, I'm such a baby. I wouldn't survive up there anyway. But pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. You're incredible. We've been having so much fun on Clubhouse, and yeah, like I'm excited to be here, releasing the genie with you.
And I know you've got a fabulous story, and I can't wait to share that with the viewers and listeners. So I kind of set the back scene for you. So tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I mean, don't you love that question, right? You love it. You love doing it to other people.
It's kind of nice when you pull people out from behind the microphone and like, oh, damn it.
No, I much prefer this seat, by the way. It's much tougher in your seat, I know. So, my backstory, I'm from California. I'm a native. I have experienced multiple traumas, like a lot of people in life. And for a long time, I didn't realize they were traumas. And I think that's part of why I'm so passionate now about helping other people, because before I just didn't understand it. And unfortunately, I lived a life for several years, even though I was making money and doing good things, I was still I still had an inner ceiling because my mindset was limited by limiting beliefs. I was abandoned at 14 years old by both of my biological parents, who had divorced before I even knew that they were married, by the way. But when I got to be a troubled teenager, which troubled I use kind of loosely, I feel like you can't, it's kind of part of the rite of passage, right? And unfortunately, I just had 2 emotionally unintelligent parents who had, their beliefs. And so I was pretty much on my own since I was 14, which led to a very rocky, now kind of funny entrance into adulthood, including accidentally taking a car for a little bit too long for a test drive from a dealer and ending up in jail for 3 months at 18. Which, to that one, Paul, I've given a talk on that one, and I've said, God, you did. If you really were just trying to get my attention, a note on the floor would have been good. Not really, but maybe something simple.
But, something with return to sender would have been quite appropriate.
But no, I had that school of hard knock life, and I learned really quickly what I did not want in that sense. And so I got my butt moving. I started my first business at 22 years old, which by then I was actually also divorced with a single child for my first time. And so, but I being an entrepreneur gave me an opportunity to be there as a mom. And that's kind of what took my journey down that path. Though I still went from time to time and worked for companies because I just wanted somebody else to pay the bills and me to just come in and get my paycheck. But ultimately, the freedom of choice and the freedom to dictate how far I could go, how hard I could, needed to work, those things I wanted to be able to dictate. And so I got remarried. I was with that husband for 14 years. Together, we built an amazing, very successful business But once again, we found ourselves, though financially successful, very, very much in a toxic relationship, and that kind of my coming of age story at that time. Now I had 3 kids at 38 years old. Dang it, I'm starting over again, right? It's back to ground zero. It's back to, but this time it was amazing because I'm like, well, wait a minute. Now I really get to figure out what the hell I want to do with my life. And I'm making choices based on what I want, not what somebody else is telling me to do. So, I am now in the media space, but I am an artist first, and I'm just passionate about creating content that speaks to not only these very important issues in society we need to address, but also especially survivors of trauma. So whether it's a book I'm putting out, or it's a short film, or it's content we're putting out through our nonprofit media company, it's all going to be, kind of PBS. It's going to be educational. It's going to be intended to create growth and really sometimes seriously take on those conversations we need to have. And so we do that. And that's kind of where my journey is now. I love it. I am remarried. 3rd time is the charm, they say. Hoping it. I never saw myself. To any woman out there who unfortunately finds themselves being married and they didn't want to, it's okay. And so now I'm married to an amazing husband. He is in film. I got to brag just a little bit. He has a film coming out, upcoming, Tiffany Haddish, Oscar Isaac, The Card Counter. He's brought over 100 films to the big and small screen. And so some people look at my life and say, we're very privileged. To which some people, I'm going to say, we've worked hard to get where we're at. And so I'm thankful for that. But I have to be very honest. We're not up here putting up any facades. We are still hustling. We are still grinding every day to just continue growing and in turn take the success that we have and help others. So in a nutshell, hopefully that covered it.
Well,
Are we done now?
I think that one went out of the ballpark over my head. So, you asked the question. No, I mean, I love it because what I see from that is a full spectrum of, first of all, starting off with other people's beliefs, moving to the fact that you're in control, not just in one area, but all areas. And a lot of people, they kind of walk in at the end and they think, oh, this is easy. You've got all the success. You're like, look, it took me all this to get to it. And that is where I think the trauma and your lessons really, really hit the spot.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you something that I don't really talk about this too often, but to share, especially considering I'm having this conversation with you. When my mother was 6 months pregnant with me, she went off a cliff in a car. She was driving. My father was in the car and 2 other passengers. They went off, and it was one of those canals, like a water canal with cement. So just as she was about to hit the other side, she didn't. She hit the wall and springboarded back. She says that before she passed out, she was able to pull. Now she's 6 months pregnant. The steering wheel, I've seen pictures. Her stomach was black and blue. Her teeth were knocked out, and she had managed to pull everyone out of the vehicle before passing out herself. And only recently have I really started to realize how long I've been fighting for life, because I never had to come out. My mom didn't, all this black and blue stomach, but I didn't come out. I stayed in there, stayed in the cooker. And I arrived on June 30th, 1975, healthy, happy, ready to do some craziness, I guess, it does. When we really talk about what we've gone through in life, some things we don't even realize it happened, right? I was in the womb. But I bet if you sit down and talk with somebody, they'll say that in the womb, somehow, maybe there was a trauma created even then, right? I mean, no. I'm sure you know some people who talk about that.
To be honest, you're right. I mean, and trauma, it doesn't come at a certain age. And actually that one there was, you're right. I don't believe that actually you get a free pass if something happens like that. It may not be obvious, but now you know that story, it gives you a different view.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. Well, look, this is going to follow quite nicely, considering you don't want to come out of the womb. Now, what I'm going to ask you was, what was your release the Genie moment? So threaded together beautifully. So what was your aha moment?
My aha moment was actually nearly losing my sister, my adopted sister, but my sister nonetheless. She had gone through a traumatic brain injury. And by the way, I had already beaten cancer 3 times in my life. I was sitting in a marriage where my ex-husband had been abusive. He had been, had infidelity. There were infidelity relationship things going on. And I had really tried to stay in the relationship for a year and a half after catching him having an affair with a girl I hired straight out of high school for one of our stores, just to throw a little juicy in there. I remember working through the marriage for a year and a half, really trying to like forgive and move forward and all these things, because I do believe that there can be healing after such an incident. But I'm so sorry, my phone. So what ended up happening though was my sister. We were on vacation in Mexico celebrating my birthday. My sister's husband starts sending text messages that we can't really fully understand. He's saying she might not make it through the night. We get on the phone, we find out that she had an AVI, an articular ventricular malformation, an AVM, that burst. She never even knew she had it. We get on the next plane the next morning. We fly into LA. I drive down to San Diego. My sister is laying in the bed fully, she had to have brain surgery. She's in a coma. And it was a very, very difficult journey. And I remember the ride home from the hospital that night, Paul. I'm sitting in the passenger seat. I'm looking at my ex-husband, who was then still my husband. I'm knowing all that we had continued to go through, how hard I had been fighting. And honestly, I looked at him. I can curse, right? Just a little.
Okay. Go for it.
I looked at him and I said, I did not survive cancer to deal with this shit. I did not fight to be here. And that's something about going through cancer, because you take toxic medicine and then you start to really realize you don't want toxic things in your life, including people. And I looked at what my sister had gone through, and I say this because I'd always kind of been the sick one. My sister had nothing. I mean, she barely even had colds. She'd never been sick a day in her life. And then all of a sudden, she's in a hospital fighting for her life, being told she might not make it. She was only 1 year older than me, or she is only 1 year older than me. And she has since come through that. But that moment, because I had the liberty of dealing with the disease where it's like you get the test and it's a process, she didn't. And so it just made me think what I always tell people: I could have survived cancer and then die in a car accident tomorrow. I don't know. People always high five me. Congrats, you beat. I'm like, I'm still living. So guys, it's like, I'm not done yet. And that aha moment for me, Paul, was genuinely realizing that if I'm responsible to make this life the best that I can, it's not always going to be perfect. But if I'm giving power to people who don't have my back, who I'm pretty much thinking I'm going to spend my life with you, and then look down the road later and then realize you don't, is that really what I want? Why am I wasting time doing that? So that was definitely for me, and it changed. And then there was one more encounter where it was very abusive. And then the next thing I was like, get your shit and get out. Like, that's it. We're done. Like, that's it. I did not survive cancer to deal with this.
You're so right, because if you've walked through the ring of fire once, twice, 3 times, and this is not where you're going to end, because there is a reason why you did that, and it's not going to be destroyed by something else. So I get that, and it's kind of like new broom. That's again, it goes back to the fact of you do not have to stay where you don't want to stay.
Right.
And, so,
and sometimes it's, there's a very interesting, I love this line out of the movie on Amazon Prime that just recently came out called Herself. I don't know if you've checked it out. It's about a woman. It's actually based in Dublin. So it's a Dublin film. And I love it because I love to see the international stage getting films everywhere. And it's about a woman in an abusive relationship, leaves, and the courts are kind of giving her a problem. There's a line in the movie, and it's in this trailer. If you go check it out, it's called Herself. But she says, everyone's asking me why I didn't leave. Nobody's asking him why he did those things. Because I think for women in relationships, or people in relationships, you are tied to that connection. Of course, you're staying because you want to make it work. You want to save you don't want your children to go through these things. But ultimately, you have to remember that, it is a role modeling process. For me, I realize if I show my kids this behavior, I shouldn't be surprised when they grow up and do the same thing. And it should be added to that. Yes, I'm done with cancer for now, but I live with 2 autoimmune diseases, a heart issue, and fibromyalgia as a result of my treatments and therapies. So, every day in life for most of us, and I think that's what COVID has definitely highlighted, without bringing that word into some conversations, because I know for some people there's a different feeling, but in reality, I feel like people like myself who've had to live with new normals, yourself, there's this abrupt change, and then we can't wait for life to get back to normal or the way it was. And often those expectations have to be changed. The goalposts are changed in life. But that doesn't mean that you can't experience it the best way that you can. That doesn't mean that you have to sit there on the floor, and it doesn't mean that you won't have bad days, but it also does not mean you won't have good days. And I have definitely learned to turn a lot of the what if I fail into the what if I succeed, what if it's, and even if you fail, I love people who just go out, and even if you fail, you learn lessons, you have experiences. I don't regret my experiences. I don't even regret my ex-husband. I also don't regret leaving.
But you see, every lesson that you've learned on the way is now you. And, you wouldn't be who you are and where you are if you say, oh, I'm going to take that piece out. So I think it gives people hope, because you're right. Everyone is just going through a trauma. We just happen to be doing it for a lot longer. So now we're able to help other people who are finding it, they're starting out. So, and that's why I love your podcast. And that's why I love the work you're doing on Clubhouse, is because it's all included. So you were very kind to give us a quote. Is there any other quotes that really sort of jump out at you?
Oh man, I'm a quote girl. I love good quotes. I don't know. Like, I feel like my grandfather raised me with a lot of those. If where there's a will, there's a way. My favorite is the mat says welcome, not wipe your feet.
Oh, I like that one.
Like that one, right? That's just a couple of them that, but no, my first book had a lot of the quips in it, it just like, another one of my favorites. You'll love this one. And I'm sure your audience will too, because people always tell me, life is short, life is short, life is short. And I always turn around and say, yes, but it's terribly long if you're miserable.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes.
Life is short, but it's terribly long if you're miserable. And anybody who's actually been in an unhealthy relationship or maybe a bad roommate situation, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, time passes at a very slow pace. Wow, I love it, man. That was value packed there. Thank you. So now we're going to dive in. I mean, crumbs, you've told us already a lot, but has there been any adversity other than what you've just told us about? Has there been one thing that really has been you've had to overcome, which was particularly difficult?
I think that for me, the biggest challenge has been overcoming myself. And what I always tell people for a long time, I'm better at it now. I've learned to investigate myself, understand myself, even when I'm behaving a certain way. Maybe this is going to be even really bad. Like I will look at the calendar a little bit. Why am I behaving this way? Now I'm a woman. I feel like I should be able to say that, right? Like, guys, I know they can't, but for a woman, I can. It's like, wait, am I, and I start to say, I ultimately end whatever it is that I'm doing, like, even if I'm upset with my husband, it's like I have to ask myself, Aalia, what do you want? What do you want out of this? What do you want? You want to be on to a fourth marriage, or do you want to sit down and actually take this into consideration? Maybe you're being a little bit selfish. Maybe you're being a little bit sensitive. Maybe you should take a step back and look at this from a different perspective. I still have to have talks with myself, but that was honestly the biggest thing to overcome, Paul, because as you know, we are, there's a lot of people that will negatively talk about us. Oh, I'm going to do this. And they'll be the ones to say, oh, well, that's not going to be very, but the people who do it the most are ourselves. Well, what if, and sometimes I love being pushed a little bit. Like, I remember when my grandfather would throw me in the water and say, well, how I learned to swim was he threw me in the water and said, swim. He kind of stood by and made sure I didn't drown, but it was like, that was the way he taught me to swim. Move your arms and legs. You'll be fine. Just move it. And, I think that for me, again, the biggest thing to overcome was just shattering those limiting beliefs. So mindset has two different things. There's fixed mindset and there's growth mindset. Now, I was always smart. I was always a good person. I could hustle. I had like 2 or 3 jobs. Even when I had my companies, I would take another client. I always looked for multiple lines of income, never really wanted to rely on one thing alone. But when I would self-talk, it was like, oh, well, that I just got lucky, right? I would often not give myself credit. Well, that was luck. And then instead of giving myself kudos for working as hard as I did. And, it's become that journey really, truly of saying, I understand now that limited mindset. It's like a mindset. Picture the weights you have in your gym, different size for different things, right? No differently than a toolkit. And so my mindset, if it's fixed, it's saying, okay, I could do this because of this, but that's probably as far as I can go. I'm a 45-year-old woman trying to make her second start in media. They're going for the 20-year-olds, right? That's fixed mindset. Instead, I've learned to adjust growth mindset. Growth mindset says the freaking sky is the limit. Maybe I can make a new genre for 45 plus women who freaking kick ass. I mean, J-Lo's doing a great job right now, right? We're kind of taking, and so choosing to have that growth mindset has been very pivotal for me, and understanding that I do deserve these good things that are happening, and that the bad things are just part of the process, quote unquote bad, And I mean, I just have tried to learn to enjoy the ride. But honestly, that mindset has been the biggest thing to overcome. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And, when you get into the creative thing, you take that glass ceiling away, which you mentioned, and you take a lot of pressure off yourself, because it's actually, okay, I can fail my way to success.
Right.
And failure is one person's failure is another person's success. So I think that's a really good way, as you said, of getting out of your own way and enjoying the ride. When you said life is short, it can be long if you're not enjoying the damn ride. So
Right.
I love that. I love that. Well, look, tell us what you've been working on at the moment. I sort of mentioned Clubhouse, so let us know what's cooking in your kitchen at the moment.
Oh my goodness, a lot. So one, I'm working on my third novel. And, to speak kind of just to dovetail on what you said a second ago, my first book was my baby. It was my first, I'm a writer, I'm an artist, I'm putting it out there, biographical fiction novel for female empowerment. I depict the end of my last marriage and the journey of learning to say, that I'm this is for me. My second novel, which funny enough, I went to London to actually do my boots on the ground research for part of it. It's part of it is set in London in 1937, one of the timelines, dual timelines. And that book, again, speaking to what I see myself and how I've been thankful to have that validated through the literary world, because that last novel has won 3 prestigious international awards for its hard-hitting message against, hateful rhetoric. And it's a multicultural fiction, historical, because it has a historical component. But, it's my effort at creating or creating a story that hopefully would touch humanity, because I feel that that's how we do it, right? Through entertainment and still, giving a different perspective. So what I'm doing now, so I'm writing the third book out. I have 3 more books to write. But this one it's another fiction novel with a mother-son duo that are going to save the world. Really cool. So I'm working on that, trying to get that done. I have a charity raise that we're going to be kicking off in April. It will be a $500,000 raise that we're trying to do to afford our organization the opportunity to not only continue creating this content, which does go to underserved and help our communities, and as well as even we have an entire mentorship internship program for young creatives at USC and throughout the country who have been put out because of COVID. And now they're able through us create content and start off their careers doing impactful things. So we're doing that. And I'm so thankful to have the support of Larry Namer, the co-founder of E Entertainment. So he's he's just such a huge supporter to what we're doing. And I'm very, very grateful and thankful for him. So I wouldn't be getting that opportunity without him. And then we have Clubhouse, where we're creating a community and a space there, which is, a lot of people are like, what is Clubhouse? And it is right now, right here, it's invaluable for so many of us who have not been able to get out. We had EmpowerCon that we had launched in 2019 at the Los Angeles convention, an amazing one-day empowerment event with, incredible, kind of a TED Talks with spoken word performances and things in the comedy performances in between, that all were geared at empowering people. By the way, people, because I'm very much across the board, men, women, youth, it's open to everybody. It's definitely for our community. And so we are just really moving through all of that. I have a team of an incredible, like I said, these interns and our staff right now that support us as volunteers because we are a nonprofit media organization, just doing it and creating more shorts. We recently released our first, it's a DACA for the Dreamers, a short 7-minute short film that we did via COVID style, because COVID for production has definitely created all these changes. But that's what we're doing. And we're making our next documentary short based on anti-bullying. Actually, you're going to really love that, because that we're doing with a gentleman named Jeff Gomez. He was a producer on films like Avatar, Pirates of the Caribbean. Well, he was paralyzed by forceps and disfigured when he was born. And as a result, he actually was born. His story is incredible. And he ended up growing up and creating a synergy between bullies. It's anti-bullying, but it's really focused on the people who are bullying and helping to create a better support for them and understanding why and saying like, let's, and so he's been able to use art and his creativity with animation and things like that to create these programs. So we're actually doing a short film on him in these little bite-sized nuggets to try and give people glimpses into these amazing, incredible stories, and hopefully creating some empathy and compassion for one another.
What I really love about when you were talking there, you were able to see things through so many different eyes. It's not just one thing, and giving people that leg up as well. So, there's a great phrase that you only look down on somebody when you're helping them up. Yes. And being able to then create the empathy, but with a sense of humor, because actually that's kind of what's needed at the moment.
Yeah, I remember getting out of the hospital one time, Paul, and I think somebody asked this the other night, and that night I had somebody take me to a comedy show. I was like, I will be cracking jokes on my deathbed. I can assure you. Even when I was in the hospital, my nurses would come in, you're cracking jokes. That's definitely, because sometimes in life you really just, you can't help but laugh at things. And sometimes you won't laugh in the moment, but one day, like me, when I talk about being in jail when I was 18, as this young, dumb kid who put herself in a bad predicament, I laugh at it now, but for years I swept that skeleton under the rug, threw it in the closet way at the back, right? That was an embarrassing moment of my life that I had no desire to tell everybody. In fact, I was so busy looking for redemption and looking for grace and trying to convince people that I was good. And now at this stage of my life, I pull out that story to also tell people, don't judge so much. People are allowed to make mistakes. Your mistakes do not define you. And must we all be reminded of a great quote from a movie that I love, good things happen to good things happen. Oh my goodness. Bad things happen to good people and good people do bad things.
I think you're right, because no one's exempt from that. And that to be able to bring out what's the bad side, that means you've actually arrived at a place where actually you're like, I've got this. Right. Because if you were still in a unsteady position, that would be something which you thought, I can't rock the boat anymore. So I love that. That's really, really powerful. So
yeah. Well, and I love that we have your support, and we want to lift up your story on Clubhouse. We all get to come in there and just talk to people. Look, and from the podcast, we had Sean Swarner, who is one of the 8 most inspirational people, according to ESPN, in the world, in history. And he was up on there, hanging out, talking. I love it that people just get that instant. It's like being part of a radio talk show, like right now, or like this, and somebody chiming in and say, hey, I have a question. And how it reminds me of party lines when I was younger. Some people don't remember party lines. I do. Do you remember party lines? Did they have those?
I'm a straight English boy. I don't know. I'm going to run with yours. So tell me what.
No, but it's been cool. It's been a great way for a lot of people to connect, and for people to go in and learn. People go in there with business. They want it, maybe because of COVID now has created a lot of uncertainty for people. And so how do you pivot? How do you structure? How do you scale? People like myself, and others, and you have a professional background as well. We go in there and we offer value for free. It's like going to a Tony Robbins event, but without having to pay the $3,500 plus ticket cost,
And it's it's completely interactive as well, which is good. And it's a safe place where, especially in the group which you're building,
Right.
You invite people to actually tell their story, but it's done in a very safe and a gentle way, and then people they build off it. So it's kind of unscripted stuff. So I love it. I mean, anyone who hasn't done that yet or anything like that, it's a really, really good outlet. So, and I would encourage you to just drop in. You're with friends now with us too, and everyone and the intern. So just swing by. So it's kind of cool. Well, look, now I'm going to get you to ask you a new question, which is kind of exciting, which is, who is your hero and why? Now, they can be alive, dead, fiction, non-fiction.
Oh my goodness, that's a good question. And, as far as heroes, that you really got me stumped with that, because I've never really thought about that in the sense of like a hero. I look up to so many people. I would say that for now, I will say a hero in my life has absolutely 100% been Maya Angelou, because it was from that jail cell when I was 18 years old, when I had just made this horrendous mistake in life. I wasn't making the best decisions in my life at that point. And I read her book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And by her sharing, and I've said this, like, I mean, she Maya Angelou is amazing, right? We know that. But some people don't know, if they don't read her story, that she ran a brothel when she was younger. And she found herself in some very difficult situations. She'd also experienced rape. I had experienced sexual assault myself, and things that I could, like, wait, so you can be broken and still be successful, and you can still be okay? Holy cow. That was the first time that had really been represented to me. And as a young girl who had also been seen kind of like as an outsider, I was the brown haired, darker, growing up in a town which was very predominantly white. And then, my dad is an immigrant. My mother's family is like more American, blonde hair, blue eyes. And so I was different. And I was also always told all my life that I looked like my father, whom my mother hated viscerally. And that was like, wait, okay, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And it just, you'd be so pretty if you had grandpa's blue eyes, and, so all these things, right? So Maya Angelou, this Black woman who felt ugly and felt these things about herself, and to read her story, it changed my life. So obviously, and needless to say, when I stepped out of that jail cell as a young woman, I never returned as a person to commit another crime ever again. I changed my habit. Well, I mean, not like I just made sure that I understood, yes, there are consequences to our actions. Fear is not an excuse, because I was simply just afraid to take the car back once the guy started yelling at me. And ultimately, there is a path to redemption. That's the key. There is a path to redemption. We can mess up, but we can also overcome and in turn thrive, like you said, as a result of those things that we go through. So, if I'm able to speak to young girls who have gotten in trouble and I can help them, then I want to do that. I mean, maybe that's why we're here, right? Some of our less than perfect role models, because we can at least show people, so many people have this a fear of not being perfect, right? I grew up in Napa, where a lot of kids, it was like, you're going out of high school, mommy and dad were sending you off to college. And while that's great for a lot of people, that was not my life. And so I felt ashamed, and I felt bad, or I felt people would automatically judge, because I didn't come from a poor family, but I just, like I said, emotional intelligence is not something that's really defined by financial status.
And you're right.
Right?
You can be very wealthy and on a things basis and a money basis, but it's the other parts which actually and what happens is the other parts kind of seep into the part which is good, and so I think that, right, and a hero changes the direction of your life, and
exactly.
From that point of view, it's a great hero, and I love it. That's really, really good. So sorry to stump you, but hey, we're in the flow.
Well, I just didn't want to throw out an answer that was like conjured. I mean, that is authentic. And I mean, I say that maybe because I use that, hero. It's an interesting question to me, because I think that in life, I've learned to not put too many people on pedestals. people are human, people fail, and that's just the reality of it. But no, I mean, I think exactly by that definition, someone who has definitely changed my life. And that's why when I thought about it, I'm like, okay, yeah, definitely. That's the authentic, not just a conjured answer for you.
No, I mean,
in the Genie theme, we're not conjuring answers, we're conjuring power. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're mystical beings. I mean, I've got one sat over my shoulder here, so you know, I'm pointing the wrong way. So speaking of which, we're now going to get you to tell us our 3 wishes as the very wise genie. So, are you ready?
Yes.
Here we go. Right. The wish number 1 is: what is the best advice you have received in your life?
Oh, I actually know this advice. Don't ever beg for someone's love. You don't have to beg was actually exactly what was said to me. And it was just by a random stranger listening to me have a conversation on a phone. And he just stopped me and he said, "Miss, I have to tell you something." I said, "What?" He said, "You never have to beg for someone's love." And it was just such a weird moment. But yes, that was truly, even if I didn't fully understand it at that young age, it was definitely the best advice I have ever gotten.
It's, you know, best advice comes in very, very different clothing. It's not, you know, it's not what everyone thinks. So it's kind of the thing you needed to hear at the time. So it's really, really good advice. Yeah.
It stuck with me. This happened when I was probably like, I mean, I must have been about 19, 20 years old. This was 20 years ago. And I can close my eyes and be right back there, Paul. I can be right there. I can see him. I remember this. It's so distinct. So, you know, obviously it hit me, you know, it meant something to me. It took a long time for me to finally understand it, but now I hold on to it as why I know why it stuck with me. You know? Yeah. So
and to us, you know, life is a funnier way of trying to teach you lessons, and it keeps coming around until you've learnt the damn thing. So I love that.
It's tenacious like that, right?
Oh yeah, no, it's that's how it gets its kicks, bless it. So second wish is what advice would you give your younger self? Mm-hmm.
I get asked this quite a bit. My advice that I would give to myself, if I could sneak into a room and speak to my younger self, I would say the road's going to get bumpy. You don't know it, but you have greatness within you.
Love it. Love it. Love it. It's like giving yourself a virtual hug, which is actually really, really cool. And you don't want to spoil the surprise. You're just going to tell them, look, buckle up. So.
Right. Yeah, because they always ask us if we could go back and maybe do something different, right? But you and I both know that there's moments where we're like, sure, right? But then there's also moments where we're like, but then we wouldn't have these things. And like I tell people, cancer was like the worst and best thing to happen in my life. And that's a strange thing to say, but if you've been through it, you understand, you know? So yeah, but I mean, it's a bumpy ride. Nothing's going to change that. My life will continue to have ups and downs, but just remembering there is greatness within me. And that's what's gotten me through this far. And that's what will continue to get me through the next, no matter how many years it is, God willing.
And that's the thing which can be communicated to, you know, it's earned at a hard price for you, but actually you can save somebody some of the journey. You don't want to replace their journey, but you can certainly be there just to say, I know.
Right.
And,
right.
I love it. I love it. I've got so much value already. I mean, I feel almost embarrassed to ask you my third wish, but I'm going to go anyway. So the third wish is, could you tell us one personal habit that attributes to your success?
Meditation is something that people say all the time. And I'm going to tell you why that meditation combined with breathing, to be quite honest. Because from a physiological perspective, there are moments my body becomes overwhelmed, even by the pain that I experience. And meditation is something that, by that, I mean just getting in a very quiet space and within myself, one of the greatest experiences I ever had was attending a Yoga for Hope event. My ex-sister-in-law, this was several years ago, in downtown San Francisco in Union Square on a Saturday afternoon. I thought I was just supporting a charity event because this was put on by City of Hope, an amazing cancer organization hospital here in Southern California. I thought I'm just going for a charity event. This day and I was a newer yogi at that time, because yoga and just self-focus, all of that became extremely therapeutic for me. And so here we are in downtown San Diego. I'm doing yoga, and I'm used to doing yoga up to that point in a very nice quiet studio with some cool house music going on. I'm doing my flow. I'm able to get into my center place. So here I am in downtown San Francisco, man, and there's horns honking, buses, fire engines, dogs, kids, people. I mean, it is chaos. But Paul, to be able to understand the power of being still, and I'm a very self-conscious person, so to not care what any other person thought, to be able to find a stillness in the middle of that chaos. By the time I got done with this charity event that I thought I was going to support them, I felt like I had been at a spiritual retreat for like 3 days. 3 hours made me feel like it was invigorating. It was healing. It created an awareness within myself that I could do that. And the experience was so perfect because, even in my dealing with my health issues, I picture when I'm going into that meditative state, I'm picturing my healthy cells beating the heck out of the naughty cells, those when the cancer cells are, I was like, beat them up. And, it became part of my therapy. Secondly, the breathing opens up the blood oxygen within my system. When I get upset, you have to breathe for 10 seconds, take breaths before you move forward. And those two things, even just helping me calm down, helping me feel better in that moment, have been instrumental in my success, because there are days that I definitely get overwhelmed. There are moments that I get overwhelmed, and just being able to be cognizant of, okay, well then I just, need to come back. And, a lot of people do ask me how I'm aging. I mean, I know that this is not something you're worried about, but like, I don't dye my hair yet. This is like my natural hair color. And after all, because people always say, well, stress makes gray hairs. I'm like, well, then I don't know what happened, because I should have a hell of a lot more gray hair. I should be like all gray, but I'm not. My husband, who's younger than me, is. He's like, but part of that is a genetics thing, but part of it is also just the ability to understand and let go of being in control, and taking that and just meditating and breathing through it and saying like, okay, and understanding that helps you, and then moving forward to the next moment. Because, when people ask me questions like, how did you write your book? And how did you beat this? And how did you, one foot at a time, one day at a time, one breath at a time, just like all of us. And, when I look at you, I'm honestly very inspired and reminded of being back in the room with the doctor when my sister had her brain injury. And he said, look, it's up to her. She's in there. She's in coma right now, but we see her in a coma, but what we don't see is what her body is doing. And when I realized the power of her brain as part of her recovery, because she had to learn how to smile all over again. She had to learn how to tell her arm, it was a staged progress, ICU, lower level in the hospital, rehab center, hospital bed at home. And then finally and I remember there were times when her arm would still kind of stay a certain way, and her exercise was to tell her hand to straighten out and move. So those type of experiences have definitely made me realize so much more of the power of our brain. And I think that ultimately a large portion of my success is not about having all the answers or having all the drive in the world, because I don't. It's about just being able to, when I come to those moments, and also, and make sure I take time for those moments to meditate, breathe, and get through it.
I love it. It's such a powerful mix. And it kind of goes back to your first wish of the greatness, and you are able then to tap in to that. So you have actually felt what that is. And and I do believe once you walk that path once, it gets easier and easier to carry it and get back to there. So That's
Right.
very, very inspiring, and yeah, there is no magic bullet of how to. You know, people expect you to say, "Well, actually, I just did this," and it's never like that.
And
So,
sometimes people are like, well, that's such a basic answer, meditation and breathing. But, for people, it helps. And like I said, it's also just going back to giving my mind. That's why the meditation, because, when I didn't finish there, but like when the doctor said, it's up to your sister's body. Her body is doing its own work. Now, she was not cognizant, but to know that she was still fighting, her body was still, so we are natural fighters.
survivors.
To live no matter what situations we're in. We may not have the opportunities to, in certain cases, and when I'm speaking more extreme cases, but like our natural fight is to live. When we get an injury, our body immediately starts to try and fix it. Can't always do it, but its initial reaction is to try to, right?
Yeah.
So if we understand we're natural fighters and then we just build on that, I think that when those tougher days come, you lean on that internal fighter to kind of get you through, right?
Yeah, I think you're entirely right. The overwhelming will to survive trumps everything else, and it can be something very bad. But if there's a how to, I think that's the closest I've heard actually as an explanation. So excellent, love it. Oh, I'm in clover, man. I'm well ahead on the wish scale. So that's good. That's awesome. So
You can have as many wishes as you want for the record.
well, to be honest, I feel like I kind of did. So so I know you love the personal development, and is there a book which you could recommend for the listeners and the viewers?
I mean, see, my book recommendation is not going to. I love personal development, and I know that there's a lot of, Think and Grow Rich, and like are the leadership, 21 Laws of Leadership, and all those. Those are all amazing books. But I am a storyteller, and for me, it's always a story that inspires me. So I would say, honestly, my favorite book recommendation is The Alchemist. And I love that because even as an adult, every time I've read it, I feel like I can go conquer the world after I read it, right? I want to go conquer the world. I want to go find my destiny. I want to I want to be that character. And so, and because he goes through challenges and it isn't just a walk in the park. I think it's such an inspirational story. And I mean, I've even had my 11-year-old son read it. And although at 11, he said, that's the best book I've ever read in my life. And I'm like, well, you're only 11, so let's go.
Okay. But no, I know what you mean. And I love that. I love that book too. And it's kind of like every time you read it, you just get something different. And that's what makes it so enjoyable. So if
right.
you've got
and
this book, yeah, I mean, to be honest,
I was going to say, and such a successful book. I mean, this is a book that is incredibly successful for so many reasons, and that being largely one of them.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's a very easy to get into it. So, well, look, hey, look, people are going to be absolutely tearing their hair out to hear, and because they don't want to know where to get hold of you. So, tell us where you hang out and where we can get hold of you.
Instagram is the best place to actually connect with me for, just being in tune with what I'm able to share in my life when I can. And that's Aalia, AALIA _ unsugarcoated, all one word, in representation of Unsugarcoated Media, our organization. And then we also have the Unsugarcoated Media page on Instagram, LinkedIn for business inquiries, Aalia Lanius, and definitely if you're on Clubhouse, come hang out and be part of what we're doing, because we put in the application, we're creating Club Unsugarcoated on there, and we will be focusing on two things, survivors of trauma, of course, but also like creatives like myself, creatives wanting to create social change. So maybe you're a creative who has experienced trauma and you want to be part of a group of community of other like-minded individuals who want to use that for good. That's what we're doing. So yeah, that's where they can find me.
It's a great collaboration place. So, I'm completely with you on that. Well, look, how the heck do I sum this up? Well, a born fighter who has gone through a journey, but the journey hasn't finished. Like more people saying, you haven't got a free pass to the rest of it, but being prepared and discovering your greatness really does sort of put the power in you rather than outside. So I love it. Thank you so much for being a genie. And did you have fun?
Oh my God, a blast. I adore you. You're so freaking amazing, Paul. I'm going to have you on the podcast. Like also, yeah, I know people, please continue to support yours. I love how we can, but yeah, Unsugarcoated with Aalia, stay tuned because we will be having you on next season and then you get to relax and I'll be the one like asking the questions. Don't you love it? You love being on the other side.
Right? That's kind of why I was kind, because if it comes back, I want to be. Well, look. Thank you once again for so much, so many takeaways. And I know the viewers and listeners, if you haven't got a pad and paper, go back and rewatch this because it is awesome. It's been a complete pleasure having you on. And thank you for being the most recent genie.
Thank you for having me. You too. I'll talk to you soon.
And so, guys, you know where it is. You know where we're going to be next time. So stay tuned and we'll see you next time round.
Well, that's a wrap. You have been listening to yet another episode of the Release the Genie podcast with host Paul Rogers. Be sure to follow Paul on the LinkedIn platform and learn more of Paul's resources at www.takeactionacademy.ca. And until next time, as always, be mindful and be sure to release your genie. Thanks for listening.